Hello, and welcome to a Happy New Year edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, and with me, as always, is Seth Price. Seth Price is down in the BluShark headquarters, and Seth, there are things online, people talking, so we might as well get it right from the horse's mouth. Seth, tell us what's going on with BluShark.
Well, very exciting. So I'm just in the midst of a 2-day BluShark Summit, something we do semi-annually, bringing everybody from around the country into the mothership. But Herringbone Digital, now we are part of that platform, an acquisition, which includes me staying on, a board member on Herringbone, equity in the new organization. But the piece that's really special is that BluShark stays intact, that the brand, the team, the people, Brent and Nalini, all still there. And sort of a life moment where how do you make a transition without hurting the people that got you there, the team and the
Right.
clients, right? And I think we built something really special. The leading authority for local search for law firms didn't want to destroy it. We've seen a lot of private equity firms come in and do that, and made a calculated decision that this group was amalgamating some of the best and brightest minds in the space: Jason Hennessy, Chad Dudley, Mickey Love, that they have they have verticals beyond legal, and the resources and depth of, I guess, not just resources, but talent to navigate these coming years as AI infiltrates seem like the right moment and the right group. And, based on the reaction of 75 people in from around the country, the team is jazzed. And for me, that's a huge win.
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing. You've got people that you've got long-standing relationships with, and to make sure that they're protected, they have a job. It's not just gonna get sliced and diced and cut up and thrown aside. They didn't purchase you just for your client list. They purchased you for the talent that you have and the plans that you have. So I think that's a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, and look, being on the board of something that can help shape the future of marketing, to me, was the next challenge. For me, believe it or not, it was the team here, the executive team, that was looking for the next challenge. And the idea that I was sort of pushed by them to say, hey, how can we be part of something bigger and grow something even bigger than it is? From my point of view, I think the idea that I can now, continue to help advise, curate, be the evangelist, but be part of something that's even larger than what we've built. When we met in at a mastermind in Atlanta a gazillion years ago, two schmucks sitting there, the idea that we're sitting there saying, hey, this $20 million organization isn't big enough, I want to be part of something bigger. It's kind of humbling to think that that's what you're at.
That's awesome. That's awesome, and it looks like you and Hennessy and all of those are really positioning yourselves as the market leaders, and as AI makes a difference, as digital really things, and I think one of the good things about Herringbone is that there's other industries. I mean, law in terms of local, in terms of SEO, law probably is pushing the envelope in terms of what it's doing. And so the herringbone then gets that brain trust to say, what about this? What about this? How about we try this? And they can take it to other industries and use that sort of synergy to help everybody that's in the small business space.
Absolutely. Look, they have a huge play in orthodontics, right? Are they as cutting edge in digital search? No. Lawyers, there's nothing better. That said, what I think people have done outside the legal space is they, especially with certain doctors and different providers, they know that these people are not great with appointment setting, follow up, and intake. And the idea that many of these organizations outside of legal have taken a much larger role. At the BluShark Summit, we had, a number of different panels with our sales team, our accounts team. There's often friction because, not every client signed by the sales team is a rational player.
Right.
And the accounts team is like, why are you doing this? And there's a back and forth, right? Because people change, people that we know well can be out of their minds. They'd be a lot of fun. They could have a nice law firm, but a lot of them are just,
Dysfunctional businesses.
correct, and dysfunctional people, businesses, relationships, internal, all of those things. And when you're an agency, some of that stuff the accounts team has to deal with. And it was sort of fascinating to see that juxtaposition. And when it comes to the knowledge of how other industries have done things, and what I was getting towards is that, you see a number of people who actually end up starting controlling the CRM for an organization. Now, in legal, that's not happening today or tomorrow, but for
Right.
smaller firms, when you see the firms that are just starting out, would they be better off? Many of the ones that we've mentored, some podcast listeners, if they could wave a magic wand and have somebody other than themselves overseeing intake, how much better off would they be? These are
Well,
not
and I mean that's a conversation that we have to have as lawyers because one of the things that you often say, besides it depends, is you do what you love to do, and there's a large portion of our audience of lawyers who own shops who never wanted to be an owner. They just want to practice law. I mean, we are kind of unique, and the people that we hang out with, we're kind of unique in that we like the being the legal entrepreneur. But I know lawyers. In fact, I had one here in my office yesterday who was like, "I don't want to do anything business related. I want to be in a courtroom." And he's 3 years older than me, and we've known each other a long time. And he's saying, "Look, I'm just sick of running a business. I never wanted to do this. I just want to be a lawyer." And I said, "Well, what's your intake process?" He goes, "They call me on my cell phone, maybe. I don't know how they get my number. I got an old cell number that we keep at home that's on my website that just rolls to my new cell number." I'm like, "Oh God, there's a million things that we can do." And he's like, "I don't want to do any of that stuff." And so I think there are people in our audience who are like, "Hey, I got shown the door because somebody said they were leaving and I was in that working group, and then I got pushed out. I never wanted to hang. My father never wanted to run a law firm. He got shown the door. It
well,
was
the John Fisher.
yeah. I mean that's that and I think a lot of those lawyers reluctantly get into running a practice, but yeah, if they could have somebody
Oh,
who
but
could
see,
step in and run a bunch of their things,
I'll
they
take
would
it
love
back to
to
what we
do it.
started with, though. Many of these smaller firms are dysfunctional. So, what are you going to now be reliant on dysfunctionality, or do you want to control it and be the king of the dysfunction?
Yeah,
So that's part of it, right? I mean, it's you. If you don't control, like whether a big firm or not, if you bring in cases, you control your own destiny to a certain
sure.
degree, right? And so, you know, one of the things that we see, and look, even for us, how many times over the last 20 years that we've been at this U20 plus, have you looked at your intake? As great as it was, you could be speaking at a conference about how accomplished you are, and you come back and say, oh, there's somebody here who is asleep at the wheel, dysfunctional, either malicious or incompetent. How many? I mean, it's got to be between half a dozen and a dozen times over the last 20 years that you've had serious meltdowns. I can speak for myself. There have been multiple times, and that's for a thoughtful place where I'm always trying to improve. Imagine if you just left it out there, where
Yeah.
you've been.
I mean, just in the terms of follow up, how many times have I talked to a law firm about intake and they have zero follow up process? Zero. Like
And
the call comes in, they talk to the person. "Okay, you want to hire me? I'll think about it. Bye." Click. Nothing ever again. I
And
mean,
look, I can tell you the pre-COVID era, I had a series of dysfunctional directors of intake. I say directors, like when I elevated somebody beyond that wasn't on the phone. And look, promoting from within was the worst. So it is, look, building a business, whether it be digital marketing or law firm, it is tough. It is not easy. And I think that, to come full circle, one of the things that I think the team is looking towards and looking forward to is seeing expertise. Private equity has a lot of negatives to it, and they've destroyed a lot of companies. But there are also people that know how to run a really good business very efficiently. Hopefully not too efficiently, because then you can suck the soul out of it. But
right.
if you're able to, the thesis here is everybody keeps their flag. I think it like Procter and Gamble, like where some people are going to like BluShark, some people like Hennessy, some people are going to like whoever, but that we are there. The team is committed to creating the partnership with law firms, but there are resources from beyond which are almost impossible to create as a independent startup.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, it sounds like it's really the best of all worlds for the Blue Shark clients, for the Blue Shark team. It really puts you in a position. But let me ask you, I mean, what's your work week going to look like? Is it going to be any different? Is it going to be a added layer? I mean, are you going to be stretched too thin, or
No,
are
I
you
think
going to find? Are you going to claw back time? And in Seth, I know you. If you claw back time, what's next for Seth? Because you don't ever stop.
yes, yes, and yes. I think the good news is my role doesn't change as evangelist. As I come even to the summit, I'm less and less essential. I'm on a kickoff, panel, but each team runs independently. My job is to basically come and give gloss, for instance, today to the accounts team about how do lawyers think. Not an easy one,
No,
but all the different permutations from, you know, point of contact that's irrational. How do you get to the principal, or do you? When somebody's intake isn't right, if somebody's not looking at their, all these different pulls and tugs, bringing that reality piece. So in one sense, my day to day shouldn't change much, but I do believe that with that extra, I don't want to say supervisory, but that extra voice and business consultative piece, that I will have certain responsibilities that I probably wasn't best in class at. These guys know how to quote unquote run a business a lot better than I, and can give feedback to Brett and the daily operator and president much better than I can. So we're gonna have to sit down and figure out which what's the next widget.
that will, folks. You heard it here first. There'll be another widget, and get in when you can, because that's the. But so now tell me, is now the time, if you are a listener and you have a small digital marketing company, and I know there are some small digital marketing companies that are listeners to our show. I think now may be the time for you to pitch Price Benowitz and say, hey, private equity has bought out Blue Shark. They're going corporate. You're not going to get the same attention. Now's our chance to pitch your law
You
firm,
know,
and try to steal
and,
that business, right?
and look, you saw this when Get Notice got bought by Scorpion. It was a feeding frenzy because it
Yeah.
was destroying the essence of what that guy had built. Here, I think the reason that I did this is that you can say that, but from everything that I have seen, touched, and felt, and the numbers don't lie. It has only made us stronger. It is not there again. Can I tell you what's going to happen in 5 years? I
Right.
can't. But
Well,
what I
yeah,
can
but
tell you,
nobody can. I mean, that's that.
correct.
I mean, shit,
And
we
if I
couldn't have predicted COVID, and that
right,
threw us
and we
for a loop
could,
for years.
and we couldn't have predicted the seismic change that AI would be bringing to our
Right.
industry, and frankly, that private equity is bringing to the legal space. Big Dudley DeBosier news about a managed service organization, right? So the world is changing quickly. There's risk no matter what you do. My ethics lawyer always says there's risk getting out of bed in the morning. But to me, this bulletproofs us as much as possible. Now, when there's change, I'm sure that some, digital marketing agency is going to try to sell saying, oh, it's private equity, boogeyman, because look, page one was destroyed. Some of the newer organizations that were purchased by private equity, I'm not loving the results I see. But I can tell you, as a guy on the inside, what I'm seeing is the quality keeps getting better and better. And so that while you can say anything you want right now, and what I'm seeing, we are in the best shape that we've ever been in.
So let me ask you then, as much as you can share, right? Private equity is coming, and it's coming for law firms at some point in the next decade, probably sooner rather than later. So, as somebody who has interacted with private equity, with a functional business, with clients, with revenue and that type of thing, what were some of the things that jumped out from their initial conversations with you that you said, "Oh, I'm glad I have that in place," or "Hey, I need to put together those numbers." What are the things that private equity, who may not know our industry as well as we think we know it, and that's subject to debate, of course, but if private equity is coming for that PI firm in Albuquerque, and wants and says, okay, well, you're bringing in 500 to 1,000 clients a year, and what's private equity really looking for? Are they looking for a brand? Are they looking for the systems? Are they looking for the people? Are they looking all of the above? Is there something that jumped out? Why were you appealing? I'm curious, if I'm working on my firm now, knowing that there could be an exit in the future for private equity, what are the things I should start building now or making sure that I'm tied up with?
I think that the idea, I mean, in one sense, it's build your firm as profitably as possible, knowing that they're going to come in and make it more so. So,
Okay.
if you run a non-profitable firm, it's not going to be as desirous because they use EBITDA as their metric. I am surprised, and again, I'm surprised often that I think that as the marquee firms are gobbled up potentially or by private equity, whatever number are gotten, that as we go down the food chain, I think the multiples that are going to be out there are not going to be as desirous as we think. I could be wrong, but that yes, if you've created a regional brand in Dudley DeBosier or Mike Morris, people can offer you a real multiple that is interesting, that with tax benefits and everything could be advantageous. I think the issue is that you know the things that they're going to want to see is a trajectory of growth. And if you figure that out and that they can add fuel to the fire, either through marketing or efficiencies to create profitability, those are the things they're gonna be looking for. And so I think that in general, the first people that are going to be taken over by private equity or have some sort of deal are people that have a platform that they can build and grow and incorporate other people in.
Okay.
That's the piece. And so when you say systems, I think for the mothership, that's probably the most important. But once they have a mothership, generally, depending on how they build these things, they're going to want people to follow into a given process. So there's also, whoever is a flagship versus a follower. What I loved about this particular situation is that they were not pretending to do what a lot of people in the digital space have done, which is buy people and say, this brand is gone. Here's a new brand. Everybody, nothing to see here. And that they have really done a very nice job of saying, no, we want to continue to keep that. What you've built is special. You have raving fans, and we want to just make that bigger and better rather than just bringing everything together. I think that we've seen too many missteps. And again, what I don't know is based on this thesis is how will the market in 3 to 5 years reflect with an amalgamation of brands rather than a single flag. To me, I know this is better for clients and employees. How it plays out, it will be really interesting to see. But that's why I was excited and want to be along for the ride.
Did you get any pushback from any of the Blue Shark clients and say, hey, I'm have you heard from people who say, yeah, I don't want a corporate. I like being able to call Seth on the phone and
I
chat
guess
you up at a conference.
And no, but look, I'm still there. I have a 5 year agreement. I'm in place. Nothing day to day. The world has not changed. So the
Gotcha.
great news is the results were incredible because if I'm there, Brenton's there, Nalini's there, and the entire team, like this is not a seismic shift internally. It's really a question of I think for our team, the executive team, it was the challenge of building something even bigger than what we've done. Could we grow incrementally every year? Yes. But imagine if somebody came along and said, Jay, you keep Ruane attorneys, you be the mothership of Connecticut, but we want to look at the dysfunction in the DUI space. You run a mastermind in the criminal space. Imagine if they took this as a mothership, said, you're here, but we're going to go find the J. Ruane in Texas and Florida, and we're going to bring these things here. And all of a sudden, hypothetically, I'm making these things up, but we're going to centralize intake. We're going to have PPC bought on a national basis rather than that you have it. Like these are the pieces. If you have to hire an in-house marketing person good enough as a law firm, you can afford to pay so much. That's sort of why I started BluShark. I'll circle back to that in a minute. But if you had somebody, one PPC person could easily buy for more than Ruane attorneys. Is that
Oh,
fair to say?
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if you right there, if there was a roll up, for lack of a better term, of 7 different DUI firms around the country, think about some of the things that could be centralized. Think about intake where it's, if somebody started hypothetically at 7 a.m. The West Coast people need nobody at that hour, right? But you
Right.
could have phones answered hypothetically live till 10 p.m. where it's only 7 p.m. there. So there are all these different efficiencies, and I think that what it comes down to a lot is that the law firms don't always, because they were protected by bar requirements, don't always run as rational players. People do stupid things, and not that corporate America doesn't, but
Right.
the basic fundamentals of business, running things by numbers and being disciplined, don't exist in most of our world if you leave the giant PI firms for the most part. There are
Right.
exceptions, but not many. A lot of emotion in there, a lot of bad behavior, and that as you start to put these different pieces in place, that you can accomplish some pretty amazing things.
It's interesting. If you go back 20 years, this was the beginning of the amalgamation of physicians' offices. 20, 25 years, they started doing it. The product that you get now, a lot more technology, a lot easier to book. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
yes and no, and you see successes and failures. There are
Right.
places
And
that have great
that's what I'm saying.
technology, and there's a dermatologist office that I curse their name every time I have to go because it's some centralized call center that has no idea what's going on, and it's the least possible paid people. And
Well, and that's the thing that I was saying is that, we saw this over the last 2 decades in the medical space. But yet, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, you and I were talking about One Medical and how it's bespoke. You can get in when you want to get in. You pay a little premium, that type of thing.
you don't. That's what's even crazier there, but that's another story.
But that's the thing. Like there's concierge medicine.
There's
That's what I'm
all these different levels. That's why the one
right,
minute always shocks me because it's not concierge and yet it's concierge ish.
right. And so I'm wondering if there is going to be this just division, right? And it's going to be the private equity, or then there's going to be those small shops, higher costs, and it's just targeting a totally different audience. And that middle ground that a lot of the firms we know live in is going to that's going to go by the wayside. It's either going to be acquired or you're going to double down and really niche. And because there are physicians that are doing the niching, and then the rest of them are doing aligning with the major medical groups,
Well, doesn't
etc.
that go back to your original point? These guys were doctors to be doctors, and all of a sudden they were expected to run a business. I mean, if lawyers at least had some business gumption. The doctors got nothing. They did science courses. They've done nothing. If they did, it's just DNA that helped them get through it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's my entire point. Is that I wonder if 20 years from now we'll see a backlash, which is why we talked on the last show. I wrote the book Analog Marketing in a Digital World because I think there's opportunity to do personal connections. Here's a perfect thing. Pre-COVID, now this is it's not a war story, but pre-COVID, right before COVID, you were coming up to Connecticut to give a presentation at a conference that I was putting on March 20th, 2020, and you were going to come up. Jim Hacking was coming in. A couple other people were coming in, and literally within 48 hours early that week, we pivoted to an online conference. Everyone gave their speeches, and it worked. I had not talked to the director of continuing education since that time for our Connecticut Bar Association. I wrote the new book. I reached out to him. I said, Tom, we haven't chatted in forever. We should do something again. And he's like, I have an idea. Why don't we do this? By the way, now he's promoting me to doing a 1 hour webinar to, 800, 1,500 lawyers, how to teach their associates how to generate referrals. And now my name is getting back out there, and I'm just doing that because I'm re-establishing one-to-one personal connections that I had years ago that has just fallen by the wayside. And I'm just saying, like, that's the kind of thing that we should embrace the change in the industry that we're in, because it leads for opportunity that you can take that other people may be blind to.
Yes and no. Meaning, like, I love the fact that you're doing the analog stuff. God bless. That is not necessary. The good news is it's probably private equity immune because it's not investable,
Yes,
right? And
exactly.
I mean, it is if you get enough cases that they're like, hey, we see the phone ringing year after year and it's making sense. And so, it is what the good news is if you have that, much of that will prevent you from being hurt. But let's look at the PI space. Morgan isn't, who knows? I don't know how much outside money he took, if any, but presumably some along the way. He has all sorts of syndicates that build, revenue or bring marketing co-shares in different markets. But referral lawyers, they have been negatively affected by Morgan, for example, right? And use
Sure.
that as an outside money play, whether it's private equity or whether it's Morgan money. Some big player came into the market, and even because referrals have to come from somewhere. And so while you're doing your talks and everything, you need somebody to get to that lawyer to refer to you. If some
Absolutely.
guy entered your state or woman and put billboards everywhere and did advertisements to the point where there was a brand, Connecticut DUI, that was ubiquitous,
Hmm.
I would proffer that would hurt your referral business significantly. And while it's great that there isn't somebody out there at the top level taking those cases before it gets to those people, that would be a risk factor. So I think
It
that
absolutely
alone
is
the
a risk
analog isn't
factor.
there, but meaning the analog works better when there's not a sophisticated marketer going against you.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I think the reality of the situation, though, is that moat that's created by the analog would allow me to continue to live. I mean, I got another 20
You're
years of,
living no matter what. Stop it.
well, I'm a bit of a cockroach, but that's the thing.
Yes.
Like, I have to think of my practice in chunks of time and what I need, and I don't need to be Morgan and Morgan to have a very nice life here in suburban Connecticut and have my practice. And that's the thing. Not everybody wants to have a firm the size of Morgan and Morgan. Some people want to have 100 files a year or 25 files a year and crush it and do well in that respect. So it's also, you need some self-reflection, right? You need to, as a lawyer, you need to think about, what is it that I actually want. Some people don't want to scale, and they would rather just have a nice life, and that's an admirable goal to have. Don't scale because the person in the next office wants to scale. Scale because you want to, or stay where you're at because you want to. Maybe you need some self reflection at the end of the day. Not everything is growth, right? I mean,
Well, right.
I'm sure David Benowitz didn't necessarily see the type of firm, the size of the firm that you guys have grown to, because he just wants to be a criminal defense lawyer.
And he
And
has his own little pod within the firm that he loves.
exactly. And he loves it. And if you extricated that pod and put him in another office building as Benowitz Law, and he could get the same type of client flow to his criminal practice, he'd be just as happy. I mean, he's happy with you as a partner, and you've grown, and the open doors and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you gotta do what's right for you. I love that you're doing what's right for you with Blue Shark getting acquired and allowing your people to stay, and because you really did invest in team and curate a team that's extraordinary.
And look, we
But
just had this big, summit where we did the kickoff keynote with Brent and I having a conversation. I could look out at the crowd and know that for all intents and purposes have done right by them. And which is not like, I know that I could have probably done 20% more and found somebody who was like, had whatever maniacal plan they had. We had somebody come and knock on our door who literally said, we'll give you a maximum check, no earn out, no nothing. We'll give you maximum money. If you basically, we're buying this to put our nephew, who's a Harvard MBA, in charge of the company. And you guys could go do what you want. And I'm like, you know what? I built this company. Our clients are dear friends. The employees are people that we took from interns at the law firm to build this thing. I would like to be part of something bigger, but I didn't want to destroy what we had.
so let me ask you this, and this is just maybe this is something we shouldn't discuss on the show. What's it like having that conversation with Brent and saying, we've got an offer to be acquired, and I think we should take it?
It
Because I
actually
mean,
went the
you
other way
started off
around.
in your basement.
Right. Oh, I mean, look, I had a phone call the other day with a credit card company that has never liked me after a real estate deal went south with their bank. And I needed to get a credit line increase so I could use the right insurance from the credit card for an upcoming cruise with the parents. And I was giving them numbers of what we're doing. And I was like, oh shit. To think we started in Dave's basement with Dave saying nobody's going to pick a lawyer from the internet, and David Brenton, you know what? He was the one who wanted the next challenge. We started Blue Shark to give him and the team more challenge. And
Right.
that's the theory here, that we're now, that they are going to experience. You know what? And if it's not right, they won't, when everyone's going to give it a 6 month window. And if it's great,
Right.
they'll stay with it. And that's so every day, just like for your clients, we have to prove to our clients every day that we're still the best. You got to do that with the clients have a free market, the employees have a free market too.
Yeah.
But it was really David
And you
Brady
have
came to
very
me and said,
talented people. You have very talented people who have great opportunities in front of them, and hopefully they stay with you and you're able to do wonderful things because you've really set them all up for success. It's not just the founders that are getting a check and being successful, and your whole team is set up for success, and that's a wonderful thing.
and it is humbling when you sit there and you realize this time, every time I'm at one of these summits, there's 75 domestic people sitting there, best and brightest. And every year you see this with your firm. If you could have looked back 6 years ago and you said, hey, some of these people are kind of rough, and now you've seen the level that you have curated. It is just the bar is so high, and just giddy to see what they can accomplish.
And the one thing that I will say is that you've invested a lot in your people and their own growth. You've never shied from giving them the resources they need to learn more, to get better. And I think there's a message there for all the people in our audience about reinvesting in the talent that you have in your firm or in your business. Because when you have good people and you invest in them and they get better, the tide lifts the ship, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have when I look at the decisions made early. Hey, Nalini, this she came to me with an hour and 45-minute commute. I saw a resume. I'm like, there's no effing way. Why am I interviewing this person when we were like a 6, 7 person organization? And I was like, and she came into interview and she told me she lived with her in-laws. I'm like, okay, maybe the long commute will work. And then it was like she was doing some nonsense in ops, and it was like, you know what? I think she'd be really good speaking at conferences. So I brought her along, brought her on stage. Next thing you know, they want her, not me. And it's when you can make yourself dispensable. I think that's what I've enjoyed most. We had for those longtime listeners of the show, we had a bizarre interview during COVID with the author of the E-Myth,
Oh
and
yeah, I remember that.
he pushed us in a lot of directions. And I think that, like, neither of us bought, and you were very verbal about some of the extents he went to. But I think if we take the negative away from that he was like, hey, creative lawyering should be McDonaldized. Okay, well, let's put that to the side. But the idea that when we start finding each spot that we can take ourselves out of and have somebody as good or better than us doing, and some of it is you may have the gumption now, but you and I have both aged over the last 20 years, where that even though the energy may still seem high by, TikTok standards, it isn't the same when it comes to, I don't need to have myself in every one of these buckets.
Right. And I,
And
and I don't, because I've recognized that there are better people at it, and that was a big struggle for me, allowing somebody else to take the reins of things that I had previously had my hands in. But that's been the right thing for the firm, and it's allowed us to continue to growth. I mean, we continue to grow 10 to 12% a year. We're not growing 40% a year like we did at the beginning, but hell, 10 to 12 to 15%. Last year was like 14 and a half. Like, so, I mean, that's good growth in a company.
absolutely, look, and being transparent, like as Blue Shark was taking off, Price Benowitz, and I can't say it was because of that. First quarter of 25 was not great economically. The DC region was really hit hard by a new president, that like there's a lot of uncertainty and people weren't spending money. Our numbers were not great. We had some good turnover, but that lost us some selling units. And that each of these things, the better answer is that, I'm looking at now like recruiting, right? Can I get to the point with law firm recruiting where somebody other than myself can bring things full cycle? That,
Yeah.
that's the next challenge. Can I make myself less essential for things like that?
All right. Well, folks, you heard it here first. Green Scorpion or whatever the next company is going to be all about law firm recruiting, led by Seth. And 5 years from now, you'll have a whole industry taking off or something like. Because I know you, you're not gonna just stop with this. With a little extra free time, you can find 5 hours in a week that you've clawed back. You're going to create something new. That's for sure.
Appreciate that. It's been a fun ride, and nobody that would rather have is that sidekick. We modeled this after the two old guys from the Muppets in the balcony, and 20 years later, we're starting to sort of actually attain that grumpy old man status.
Oh, absolutely. I'm grumpy. In fact, our new policy, our new theme of our recruiting in my HR manager's office is come work here. We hate people too.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's it. All right, Seth, that's going to do it for us this week on the Law Firm Blueprint. Of course, you can catch us anywhere you want to go. Take us on the road with us by subscribing to the Law Firm Blueprint podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And you can catch us live on LinkedIn every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And of course, in our Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint. Join the group, catch the show, stay with us, and learn. Be here first when you learn what Seth's next project is going to be, because I'm sure there'll be something fantastic coming along. That's going to do it for us, Seth. Anything else?
That's it. Great,
All
great
right,
to.
that's it. Get back to your summit, and I'll get back to my work. And folks, we'll see you next week here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.